Hey everyone, this is a short video about Miles Morales. Miles Morales is actually one of my favorite comic book characters. He's kind of how I got my start into comics. This video is simple. It's just explaining who Miles is, so if you're unsure about him, you want to know more, this is the perfect video for you. It was recorded about a year ago, but it's pretty much timeless. It's exactly what you need, kind of like Miles Morales 101, and there will be a lot more videos to come, so make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks so much, and enjoy the video.
What's going on, everybody? Today we are talking about Miles Morales because it was 10 years ago today that his first solo comic was released. He originally made his debut in Ultimate Fallout 4, but that was pretty inconsequential, so I consider this to be like his birthday. Since then, Miles has gone from 13-year-old superhero to savior of the Spider-Verse and so much more. In this video, we are going to be talking about all of that, all the comics, their major events, and how his world has progressed over the last decade. Let's start at the beginning. Miles was a young boy in Brooklyn. We first see Miles with his parents, Jefferson Davis and Rio Morales, where Miles wins a draw to get into the prestigious high school, the Brooklyn Visions Academy. Shortly after, we see Miles at the house of his uncle Aaron, where an escaped Oscorp spider bites Miles, giving him spider powers. Now, before we go further, I just want to tell you about a few of his supporting characters that are heavily involved in the story. Number one, his father, Jefferson Davis. Jefferson is someone who has seen a lot in his life and wants to protect his family from it. He doesn't trust his brother Aaron and his way of life interacting with his son, and he's also very disdainful of mutants and any kind of superpowered beings. Number two, Rio Morales, Miles' mother. Rio works as a nurse. She's one of the biggest influences in Miles' life, and that becomes more and more clear as the story progresses. Number three, Genki Lee. Genki is Miles' lifelong friend who is often the beacon of optimism. He's also the biggest comic relief in a story that gets pretty dark at times, and is most definitely not who Ned is based off of. Not at all. Anyways, Genki is the first person to find out about Miles' second life as Spider-Man, and he's also one of the bigger reasons his secret identity is revealed to a lot of other people, because he simply can't keep his mouth shut. He helps Miles by making web fluid and giving him advice when things get tough. One might even argue that he's the most important character in this story other than Miles himself. Alright, now that we got all that fleshed out, let's get back to Miles. Now, a reminder, this is the Ultimate Universe, where a Peter Parker has been Spider-Man for 10 real-life years versus maybe like 3 comic book years. This is, of course, until he dies fighting his Green Goblin, who also dies in the fight. Well, for like half a second until he comes back to life, but we're moving on. Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. find Miles and try to make him give up being Spider-Man before he ends up like Peter Parker, as the whole world has his death on their conscience. But after helping S.H.I.E.L.D. defeat and capture Electro, Miles gets his very own costume and actually ends up getting some training from the Ultimates, aka the Ultimate Universe's version of the Avengers. This is probably a good time to talk about Miles' powers because there are some slight differences between him and Peter Parker. He has all the speed and strength proportionate to a spider just like Parker, and Spidey sense like a lot of other spider people. But he has some really cool powers that are actually completely unique to him. Number one, he can camouflage himself to the point where he's practically invisible, and this comes in handy pretty often. But number two is his Venom Blast, where an electrical surge through his body electrocutes his opponents. And it comes in clutch in just about every single scenario when fighting almost any villain you can think of. There's some other versions of his Venom Blast that come in later in the comics as well, but I'll let you read and find them for yourselves. You remember his Uncle Aaron? Well, it's around this time that we find out why he had that spider in the first place. It turns out he's actually a notorious burglar called the Prowler. He finds out about his nephew's newfound powers and wants Miles to work beside him, or he'll reveal his secret to Jefferson and Rio. They end up taking out the Scorpion together, but Miles has had enough of this. The two get into a fight after Prowler pushes Spider-Man to his limits, but Miles, still not fully aware of his powers, ends up using his Venom Strike, overloading Prowler's gauntlets and accidentally killing his uncle in the process. Spider-Man is pictured at the scene, which intensifies Jeff's hatred of superhumans, but it doesn't end there. In between that though, Miles would team up with Peter Parker of Earth 616, the main Peter Parker if you're not familiar. He would learn a bit about being a hero and a bit about the multiverse, which becomes very relevant later, but for now, we get back to the main storyline. Shortly after the death of his uncle comes something even worse. After being tracked down by the Venom symbiote, Miles and Venom face off in the hospital where his mom works. In the middle of the battle, the police fire shots at Venom, and Rio is killed. And just because this is the ultimate universe where things are always extreme, life doesn't get any easier for Miles during the events of Cataclysm. As Galactus is about to cause the end of the world, Miles and the Ultimates try to get as many people to safety as possible. Spider-Man eventually ends up back home where his father is looking for him. Miles, of course, tries to save him, but Jefferson wants nothing to do with Spider-Man. In the heat of the moment, he reveals his true identity to his father. Despite the impending doom of everything he ever knew, Jefferson won't let go of the past. He rejects his son's help and blames Miles for the deaths of Rio and Aaron. Though it doesn't last too long, Jefferson eventually returns after abandoning his son to reveal that he used to be a criminal just like his brother and once worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. to spy on Wilson Fisk. He would actually end up working for S.H.I.E.L.D. again in return for some favors. There's a very good, very important series called Spider-Verse where Miles, the original Peter Parker Spider-Man, and a bunch of other Spider people are involved. Now, Miles is kind of a background character to this for the most part, but his general lack of involvement in crossover series pretty much comes to an end with this one. And it's also really important to the sequel where Miles is actually kind of a lead character in all of it. But in between that, we have probably one of the most important series of all, which is Secret Wars. When the Prime Marvel and Ultimate Marvel universes collide, it destroys both worlds, and Doctor Doom creates a new world of his own. Miles is one of the few people to survive and fight with the resistance against Doctor Doom's new world. The person that helped create it all and give Doctor Doom godlike abilities is Molecule Man, who Miles and Peter Parker find when they were looking for answers. Molecule Man is always hungry, and so Miles happened to have a cheeseburger in his pocket to feed him. Once Doom's reign is over, Molecule Man helps repair the universe based on Prime Earth. And as a favor, Molecule Man specifically revives all of Miles' loved ones who died when the universes collided, and he even brought back his mom and uncle. But the crossovers don't end there for this Spider-Man. Miles plays a crucial part of Civil War when Captain Marvel begins to profile and prosecute people when the Inhuman Ulysses shows visions of the future, one of which, where it seems Miles is destined to kill Captain America. Spoiler alert, he doesn't actually end up doing that. But after this, in response to the dysfunction of the Avengers, Miles and the other young superheroes like Kamala Khan form the Champions. As you can tell, the action never really stops for Miles. Just 5 years into his comic book life, Aaron returns as the Iron Spider and forms a new Sinister Six. After a tough battle, Spider-Man is left in really rough shape in the hospital, as all his friends and loved ones come to see him. He eventually makes a full recovery though, and that is the end of the Michael Bendis run of comics, and the end to the first part of Miles' story. Which brings us pretty much up to date and the most recent issues by Saladin Ahmed. They are all awesome. I really encourage you guys to read them if you haven't already, and if you have, let us know what you think of them in the comments below.